Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another new video. Today we're going to take a look at ST, the simple terminal. I'm still not switching from Alacrity, but in a video I made sort of recently about suckless apps in general, started to customize ST at the end. Didn't get very far, I had to kind of cut it for time. I've been trying to keep my videos under 20-ish minutes recently. So it got cut for time, and so we thought we'd take another look at ST and try to get it into a state that it won't really be any different from any other terminal I would use. I've used a few different terminals in the past. I've used Alacrity, I've used Kitty, I've used Termite, and I've basically configured them all to the point that you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference between each other. I mean, there's a pretty simple aesthetic that I go for, just a gruff box color scheme, fairly transparent background, and then with PyCom that'll end up being like a blurred background, and that's the point that we're going to try to get ST to. As evidence of that here, this is ST. This isn't Alacrity, this isn't Termite, this isn't Kitty, this isn't any other terminal. This is ST running here in my sort of standard 3-window setup. So let's go ahead and get started here. To accompany us, I have Lagavulin 16. This is another example of Nick Offerman never leading anyone in the wrong path. If you're a fan of Isla Scotch at all, this is going to be great. And even if you have never tried an Isla Scotch, I actually think this is a really good one to start you off with. It's got some more delicate flavors in it, probably due to the fact that it is a 16-year-old Scotch, which at the price point it sits at is very difficult to find. I can't think of any other 16-year-old Scotch that's $100 basically, which, you know, sounds like kind of pricey, but again, for what it is, very nice price. And also, if you're in the US and not actually in Scotland, they're sending it to you at 43% alcohol, not 40, so it's a little bit higher proof. And if you're not in the Scotch world, that's not just a good thing, because, oh, well, there's more booze that'll get me fucked up faster. That's not really a factor for me. I'm already 3 drinks in here. It's more just like there's more flavor. A lot of times it comes through at higher proofs, which is why barrel proof whiskey is such a big deal for a lot of people. Anyways, I'll cut myself off there, and let's talk about ST. So the first step in this process is going to be, for me at least, is going to be to go into my suckless directory, and I'm actually just going to remove the ST directory and start over fresh. So in order to do that, again, what I sort of recommended in the last video was that people just go into their home directory and create a .suckless folder. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. You really just want a place to store suckless apps if you're going to be downloading them and modifying them. So what I did, just write in my home directory, make dir .suckless, made a .suckless folder, and go ahead and cd into that, and then we just need to download it. You can download the zip file, but what I've been doing is I've been doing a git clone. Proper way to do that is right on the homepage for all of these apps. The benefit of doing that is that, like, Git's tools for applying diff files, which is how the patches are stored, I would argue are a little bit more robust than the sort of standard built-in automatic patching that comes with suckless apps. I don't know if that's true at all, but that was my thinking. I'm going to go ahead and just download or git clone ST though. It's going to take not too long. Again, these aren't very big apps, so I don't have the best internet. You can see how long that took. Go ahead and cd into the old ST folder, and if we want to, we can go ahead and just do a sudo make install. And if we hop over to a different monitor here, go ahead and try to run ST. Boom, we've got a terminal. We can run any app in it, and it's just a normal, fairly functional terminal. It's a very simple terminal. There's not like tab support or anything else built into that, but it is a terminal and it does what we need it to do. The next thing we want to do is customize it, and there's a few different ways to do that. The first of which is right here in the ST directory. There's a file called config.def.h. This is a fairly standard config file where we can set fonts, we can set border size, we can set colors, we can customize what type of bar we want to use, whether we want to use like an underline or a block or just a standard bar for the cursor. Compare this to any config file for any other terminal. It's going to be fairly similar. The other thing that we can do, and that really helps ST stand out, is patches. And I think originally you'll sort of have some questions as to, like, well, if there's all this extra functionality that we can add to the terminal, why doesn't it just come with all of it by default? But once you start to look around through the patches, I think you'll sort of realize what they're going for here. So the thing about ST is there are a lot of features, and basically any feature you could want out of any terminal you can add to ST. So I think one of the examples that sort of sold me on this was, what is it? It's a right-click paste. Like if you just want to paste into a terminal as soon as you right-click into it, that's sort of a weird feature that's not in a lot of the terminals that I use, but is in some of the other terminals. I think it's an Xterm and console and a few others that are sort of just like the standard terminal that a more complete desktop environment type Linux distribution would ship. You can add that to ST, and like probably most of the people using ST maybe don't really add that. But the fact that you can, I think, proves the point of what they're trying to do here. Is that they're really just building software that in a lot of ways is like Arch Linux. The thing about Arch Linux that's appealing for people like me, and probably people like you, is that everything that's there you have to add yourself, which may sound like a pain in the ass to people who haven't done it before, but the obvious benefit is you don't have to add anything that you don't need or that you don't want, and you can go through and nitpick and pick exactly what pieces of software you need to build out the config that you're comfortable using. And that's what these guys are doing too, to an extent. So in terms of patches, I didn't mention it before, but let me download one of these to prove my point. So I'll download this alpha patch. This is going to let us add some transparency to ST. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to do save link as, and I just want to save into that suckless folder, and then into my ST folder. It actually really doesn't matter where you save it, as long as you can link to it, you're good. So when we actually save the folder, what we're going to get is an stalpha.diff file. And what this is a get diff file. If you look through here, it'll tell you what line it's going to make a change on, and then it's going to tell you what lines of code it's adding. And then if we continue to go down, there's probably going to be, here we go, a minus sign where it's telling us, hey, we remove this line from, it looks like we're in the config.def.h still here. We remove this line default BG0 and added this line default BG258. And then it's going to tell us, okay, well now we're editing the config.mk file, and we're going to swap out these two lines. All I'm trying to say is that if any sort of patching ever fails, and it might, especially if you've done a fair bit of customization to your apps, worst case scenario, you can just open up this diff file, look at what file, what lines are being changed and edited, and go in and edit them yourself if the patching ever fails. And I have done that a few times. The one thing that I have found that will help, and I know this isn't going to be the easiest thing in the world, but if you sort of go through and find whatever patches you're going to want to apply, and then apply them before you do any customization to the app, that will greatly increase the likelihood that they won't fail, in my experience. I don't know how true that is for everyone else, but at least in my fairly limited experience with these apps, that's how it's worked for me. So I definitely want the alpha patch here. There's a couple other things we're going to want. The any size patch. This is a cool one. So there's a few terminals, and I think ST is also one by default, that sort of sets the size based on the font. So if you look very, very closely here, there's sort of a space up top here, a space off to the left and the right, and then a fairly larger space down here at the bottom. And the reason that exists is because it's setting the size of the terminal based on the font size, is the best way I can sort of explain it. Basically what this patch is going to do is say no, just set the terminal at exactly what size it needs to be. So we'll go ahead and save that patch as well. See here, default font size, we could add that patch if we want to. I don't really care about that. Oh, one other thing I want to do here, dynamic cursor color. Let me switch back over to Alacrity here for a second, open up a config file. Let's just open up the config.def.h file here. You'll notice as I sort of move through this text file, my cursor is going to inherit the color of whatever font it's on top of. So up here at the top, we have these commented out lines. It's going to be sort of gray. They move over to static. It's going to turn orange, chars, yellow, back over to fonts, sort of white, off-white. And now we're green because we're on this text, purple over here. That's a really nice feature. I think Alacrity is the only other terminal I've seen it in. Maybe it's in Kitty as well. I'd have to double check to remember. But that's a cool feature. I like it. So I'm going to go ahead and save link as and save that bad boy. There is a Grovebox setup, but I use a slightly different version of Grovebox, so I'm going to manually set up the theme myself. There's a couple other things here. I think that's actually probably going to be about it. I don't really need to add that much to ST. I don't require that much from a terminal, and the simpler it is, a lot of times the better it is, in my estimation, so that's going to work fine for me. Let's go ahead and apply them. So let's go ahead and do git apply, and we'll just start with the first one, which is the alpha patch. Okay, no complaints. I'm going to assume that means we went well. We're going to do git apply st-any size. No complaints as well. I'm assuming that means that it worked. And then st dynamic cursor, run that bad boy. Looks like everything went well, which is great. Like I said, applying all the patches you want to do before you do any customization, that, in my experience, works out really, really well for you. In theory now, if you want to, we could rebuild the app and see what changes have been made. Well, actually, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to run suck. Oh, if you didn't see the last video, just here, let me go into my config for Zeesh. What? Oh, V. Forgot what I was doing there. And if I look at my suck alias, what this is doing is it's removing the config.h file and then running sudo make install. To explain what that does, basically, whenever we build the app, it's going to generate a file called config.h based on whatever changes we've made in config.def.h, but in order to recompile, rebuild the app, we have to remove that config file. So I'm going to go ahead and run suck. That is going to rebuild the app for us, and if we want to, we can just rerun st here. Not much is going to change, but you can see we've got a little bit of transparency here, and the borders all look perfect. If we were to go into into a config file, we've got a really small font face here, but you can see the cursor color is changing dynamically. Perfect. And also one other thing I should have mentioned out of the box, there's a few weirder things that don't always work in every terminal without some extra configuration. One of the best examples I can think of this is image previews in an app like Ranger. And if I go over to my wallpaper directory, we can get a preview here, and you can see image previews work fine right out of the box. I'm kind of impressed by that. I'm using Uberzug as the image previewer, not W3M, I think is the other one that a lot of people use. And if we actually take a look at the patches page, there is a W3M patch. So I assume that means you would have to actually install an app if you're using that image previewer, but at least for the one that I'm using, everything works fine out of the box. So that's nice. I'm gonna go ahead and just quit out of that bad boy. And let's go into my config.def.h. And let's get started here. So first off, we want to set a font. Well, actually, let's set the border pixel size. This is going to be the padding basically around the terminal. One of the things I should mention, I'm recording this on a 4K display at a 4K resolution. So if you're using 1080p, like cut this in half, this value at least, unless you're also using a 4K monitor. The sort of pixel values and things that I'm going to be using here are exponentially larger than what you should ever really have to be using. Also, font faces, not always the easiest thing to figure out. The one thing I could tell you is that there is an app in the AUR called Font Manager. And if you open that one up, it'll let you preview all of the fonts that are on your system. And the other thing is you can see exactly how they're meant to be spelled. So for example, I want to use the font Fira Code Nerd Font. And there's a pretty decent chance that if I just try to type that in myself, I might not catch it because the formatting is pretty specific here. I want Fira Code as one word and then Nerd Font separated out. Don't know why fonts are like that and they don't have a specific naming schematic, or why config files won't just do better about matching fonts, but something like that will help you out when you're building these config files if you're ever unsure about selecting a specific font face. So let's go ahead, come in here, and we'll pick Fira Code Nerd Font, and we're going to set the pixel size quite large. Let's go about 60. That, if anything, will be slightly too large, but that's fine. We're doing a screen recording anyway, so I end up scaling the font up quite a bit. Other things here, let's find the bar or the cursor shape. I want to set that to a bar rather than the standard cursor. So we need to set that value to 6, which is how we trigger the standard bar. If we want to do an underline, we'd set it to 4, block 2. Apparently we can set it to a snowman. Cool. Every terminal seems to have its weird quirk. That's not even close to the weirdest thing about this terminal, but you can set the cursor to a snowman. That's interesting. That's nice. And then I suppose, really, we're getting pretty close here. If I were to go ahead and rebuild the app, this is going to look pretty close to what we want. The last thing we really want to do is just customize the colors. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to come over here, and I'm also going to open up my Alacrity config, just so that I can copy over the colors from there. So I'm going to find my colors. There they are right here. These are sort of the standard Grovebox colors. And then we'll go into the config, find the color settings there as well. There we go. And it looks like these, I'm trying to find the cursor color and stuff. Oh, also I want to set the alpha to 0.6, just ever so slightly lower than where it was originally. And I'm trying to find the cursor color. I believe that's going to be one of these two. I'm not sure which one, so I'll just change them both to the Grovebox sort of standard foreground color. Okay, and then sort of standard setup with any terminal, you've got some bright colors and some not so bright colors. I'm going to literally just copy them over from Alacrity. So let's do that. The way I'm going to set them is with hex values. Sometimes, depending on your terminal, you'll have slightly different ways of doing this. But, I mean, hex values almost always work. Occasionally you can set them on RGB values as well. Delete all of those. And I need to add a comma to the end of all of these, it looks like. Oh, and then it looks like I also have to set the single quotes to double quotes. No big deal. Just do that real quick. This is where something like Vim really comes in handy. I'm not even using Vim to its like full potential here. That's kind of like the laziest way to manipulate text in Vim, but you can see how much time it saved us just immediately. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you watch my videos and you ever see me using Vim, I am not even close to the most efficient Vim user. So if you're wondering like, hey, should I try out Vim? Yeah, because your experience is going to be most likely at least as good or better than mine. So if you ever see me do something, it's like, whoa, man, he, manipulated that text really quickly. You're almost certainly going to be able to do it faster than I am. I'm not all that concerned about efficiency in Vim. I mean, every once in a while, I'll sort of pick up a new tip and do things a little bit differently, and that's about it. Anyways, I did go ahead and just finish all the colors here, so we'll rebuild the app again, and then relaunch ST. There we go, boys. That's all there is to it. If I want to recreate that setup again that I normally use, I was using the C Bonsai app here, and it helps if you spell it right. This is a sort of cool little CLI app that I found recently that'll just draw a little tree for you on your command line. So that's nice. That's cool. It's livens things up a little bit. I think mission accomplished there. This looks great, and I've used it a bit off and on. No complaints, really. Thanks for watching. If you need a VPN, check out Pure VPN. If you're looking for a very lovely Islay Scotch, check out Lagavulin 16 year. That's it. Thanks for watching, everybody.